Hey guys, this is the second video that I'm doing for patriotism and prayer, besides the short that I did is my first video technically. I just uploaded a video on the second chapter of Colossians and a few of the verses that hit home with me and described what's going on in our world in some aspect. But this video is going to be very much different. This video is going to be explaining this and my military career and my medical condition that was caused by the military. So I'm 19. I went into the military at 17. I enlisted before I graduated my senior year of high school. And so I graduated senior year of high school, May of 2021. August 9th of 2021, I shipped out to Fort Jackson, South Carolina to start my 10 weeks of basic training. And at this time, the COVID vaccine wasn't mandated yet, but it was shortly on the cusp of being mandated. And to be honest with you, I'm not very trusting of it. I never really have been. But if people wanted to get it, I wouldn't stop them from getting it, because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be my right to force a vaccine upon you if you want to get it or don't want to get it. That comes up to personal choice. But for me, the Army forced it on me, and I said no. And in the military, when you disobey a lawful order, you get what's called a counseling statement. So you have to fill that out. That goes up to your command, this, that, and the other, right? And that was about week 6, 7 into basic training. And then 2 weeks before I'm set to graduate, 2 weeks, I get pulled in to my unit, or I get pulled into my first sergeant's office, and he said, listen, if you don't get this vaccine, I'm going to send a second counseling statement up to the battalion commander at the time, and you will be stuck here until legal knows what to do with you. You will not graduate with your class. You will not progress in your training and go to Fort Lee, Virginia to learn how to do your job. And you will be stuck here until legal knows what to do with you. And the legal process in the military, for those who don't know, takes forever and a day to get anything done. And I did 4 years in ROTC, so one of the mandated courses was I had to study the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the military legal statutes. And I knew that if I was going to go to court-martial, and especially with all the things going on, there was a possibility that I could have gotten dishonorably discharged, because there were people, not only in the Army, but in other branches, getting dishonorably discharged at the time. I applied for religious exemption. I was denied, and didn't get all the paperwork settled for that, because for religious exemption, that has to go all the way up to the Surgeon General, and the Surgeon General at the time, and I believe still is a very, very much pro-vaccine person, and they don't really like it in the military when you deny what they tell you to take or what to do. And this is the same military that gave me like 6 hepatitis shots in 8 weeks or something like that. Like, in the military, right as you get there, you get a ton of vaccines, because they pull your blood, and when they pull your blood, if the vaccines aren't in it, then they give it to you whether you've had it or not. And I tried to show them my immunization records, which I had, and they said, no, that doesn't matter, you're going to get it anyway. And I was like, okay, whatever. These are proven vaccines. So I break, because at the time I didn't want to get dishonorably discharged at 17, because if that happens, then I wouldn't be able to vote. I'd be considered a felon. And I wasn't going to do that over a stupid shot. But I soon realized that I should have taken the risk because it was all bullcrap anyway. They were just scaring me and intimidating me when they shouldn't have had that power. So I got it. First one went off without a hitch. It was fine. Well, then November 1st of 2021, November 1st, I got the first shot on October 15th. And 3 days after that, they made me get the flu shot. And every time I get the flu shot, I get sick. And I tried to refuse that. They said, no, you'll be fine. And they jabbed me anyway. And November 1st, I was a holdover at the time waiting to get shipped off to AIT because I refused the vaccine to begin with. And I got the second shot. Well, that same day, I had a migraine that put me down for the rest of the day, and I've never had migraines before, ever. And so on the 5th, I ship out to Virginia, ride a bus there. It's a few-hour bus ride, go up. And then I get to my AIT unit in Virginia. And AIT is Advanced Individual Training, for those who don't know. So, November runs, December comes, and I still have migraines all the way through. I actually had to go to the ER to get Tylenol prescribed to me because my drill sergeants made me throw my Tylenol out because they said it wasn't prescribed to me, even though I was having like brain numbing headaches. So, and I started having full body tremors again. I had always had tremors in my hands, and tremors is uncontrollable shaking, but it's very minimal depending on what you're doing. So for me, it happens when I'm doing like delicate stuff. So I had a full body tremor for the first time in forever, which was crazy. And for those who have had full body tremors, you understand where I'm coming from. But for those who don't, it's pretty much like it's a seizure, but you're fully conscious of what's going on. Like, you don't lose your faculties, you just lose your ability to stop shaking. And I've had those 3 times. And so Christmas leave comes, and I come back home to California for 2 weeks. Well, I get back on the 4th of January. I'm supposed to graduate on the 20th. And Martin Luther King weekend, I went in to go and give blood, and because they were doing a blood drive at, my AIT. And so I went down, went to get it, and they pricked my finger to check my iron level, and they said, hey, your iron is too low, you can't give blood. And I said, okay, that's weird, but all right. And they had me sit down, and they watched me for a little bit, and they said, do you feel fine? And I said, yeah, I feel fine. So they said, okay, well, clinic isn't open till Tuesday because of the holidays, so just watch and check yourself and see what's going on. I said, okay. So I go back to my barracks, I still feel fine. And then I went out to go and get food with some of my friends and came back into the building and sat down, and then my nose started to bleed. And I just thought that due to Virginia winter weather in February, it's very cold, but it's also very dry. So it was like 30 degrees outside, and it was 70 degrees in my barracks. So I thought that it was just a dry nosebleed, and people get those all the time. But my friend who was sitting across from me, she said, no, it's not stopping. You need to figure out how to stop the bleeding. And if I would have went to sleep that night, I'd have been dead. And so I told my drill sergeant, I need to go to the hospital. I went, I got dropped off at a hospital, and I walked into the ER. I said, hey, I am gushing blood from my nose. I don't know why. They saw me, checked my blood pressure, the whole nine. They saw me, took me in, gave me nasal spray for the bleed, because nasal spray constricts the blood vessels in your nose and it helps stop the bleeding. And they drew blood. Well, about an hour later, they came back and said, hey, have you ever had a blood transfusion before? And I said, no, why? And they said, well, because your iron level is at 6.8, your white cells are at like 1.2, and your platelets are at 0. You have no platelets. And what that means is that my blood was like water and it wouldn't clot. So the normal hemoglobin level, which is your red cell level, is anywhere from 11 to 14. Or I think it's actually 13 to 17. It's somewhere around there. Well, I was at 6.8, so I was super low, super low. White cells, the normal is anywhere from like the high 4s to the high 9s, or somewhere in that range. I could be mistaken. I don't have a lab paper in front of me to look at it, but that's the general range of it. So I was at 1.2, so super low. So I was what's known as neutropenic, so I couldn't fight off infection. And then platelets, I was at 0, and a normal platelet range for a healthy human being is anywhere from 150,000 to 400,000. So I was at 0, and I've been at 0 4 times since my condition has come up. So they rushed me upstairs to a room. They hooked me up. They gave me immunoglobulin to help bring my platelets back. And I was eventually diagnosed with a disorder called immune thrombocytopenic purpura, or ITP for short. And I have a letter from my doctor in Virginia stating that I am a COVID vaccine injury. And ITP is a listed side effect on Pfizer's website. And what happens is the spike protein from the vaccine, within 6 hours of you getting your second shot, your liver is producing new DNA, and your body has changed at the DNA level. So my body had a reaction to it, and I have been dealing with ITP I've been dealing with it since January of last year. And so eventually I had to go through minor chemo to kind of balance it out. And then they let me come home from Virginia. And I got held over for a month to do one test, and that was it. So, yeah. And then I came home in April. So I got home, and the military said they were going to set up doctors for me, and they didn't. They didn't really care at all. They gave me a profile packet and just sent me home. And so then when I came home, I met with a hematologist that was up by my house, and I was on a medication at the time called Promacta. And Promacta is a very expensive experimental medication. It is, I think my dose was like $25,000 just for the copay, not just the base cost of the medication. Like it was really expensive. Well, I had run out of it. So what that meant was that medication was keeping me up along with the chemo I had done. And so my hematologist said, well, hey, your platelets are, because I had gotten my blood drawn and they had gone up from 14 to 55,000. So they were coming up, And he said, okay, well, we'll see what happens. Just stay off of it for, see what happens if you're off of it. And we'll see if your platelets stabilize. I said, okay, all right. So little did I know that one of the major side effects of that medicine is fibrosis of the bone marrow. And the bone marrow is what is responsible for producing all of your cells. So when you have fibrosis, your cell lines are getting attacked from within. And with ITP, it confuses your platelets for bacteria and your body attacks it. So that's why my platelets get eaten away all the time. And so then about a month and a half later, May 6th to be exact, I had to go into the hospital because I couldn't go to the bathroom at all. And I was in Vegas that week, and I came in because I couldn't go to the bathroom, and they sent me home even though my white cells were low. They didn't give me anything, nothing. Sent me home with pain meds, and that was it. And then so I went in on a Monday originally. I had to come back on a Friday. Well, by the time I had come back on that Friday, I had had a rectal abscess that had burst, and it caused my system to go septic. So my blood pressure was like 88/70. So I was dying. I was legitimately a dead man walking. And that, they brought me into the ER instantly. They started giving me fluid so that they could bring my blood pressure up so they could give me something for the pain. And they had to give me a catheter because my bladder was so distended because I couldn't go to the bathroom, and the pressure on that wasn't allowing me to go to the bathroom the other way at all. So they gave me that. It alleviated the pressure. They sent me up to the ICU for a day, and they were finally able to give me morphine for the pain, and I was able to sleep. But moral of the frickin' story is that I almost died because of a poison that was forced on me that I didn't need. I've had 4 surgeries, including a colostomy bag that had to be placed because my rectum was considered so bad that they had to cut all the tissue away. So my surgeon had to treat it like a 3rd-degree burn. I've had that surgery, the colostomy surgery. I'm going in for my 9th bone marrow biopsy tomorrow. I mean, you can't see it very well in the camera, but I got IV marks all up and down my arms. This vein is shot in my hands. My axillary veins are shot in my arms. I almost died because of that. And I spent 130 days in a hospital. 3 different hospitals from May 6th to September 14th. I was in a hospital, not including the 2 hospitals I had to be at in Virginia. I almost died. And the people who forced that crap on me and my brethren aren't getting punished for it. They're not getting punished for it at all. They're being let off because they were allowed to get immunity from it. My doctors here have stalled on tests because they were afraid, because in California they passed a law saying that if you spread vaccine misinformation, you could lose your medical license. And misinformation to the people that run our state is whatever you say that disagrees with us, that's misinformation. Well, I'm telling you something right now. I have been looked at by doctors like I've been crazy because I said I'm a vaccine injury. I was completely fine. And if I had this ITP in my system before I joined the military, they would have said, no, you are not a proper candidate. You need to leave because of this, 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 and this. They ran 3 blood tests. I had to go through physicals, the whole 9 yards. I lost 31 pounds at basic training. I was perfectly healthy. And then they forced that crap on me and gave me this. This is a PICC line for those who don't know. It runs from here to the tip of my heart. It runs through an artery that's up here so that they can draw blood without having to stick me because my veins suck that bad. But one thing, you know what brought me out of it? The Lord brought me out of it. No feat of human understanding or exceptionalism could have brought me out of that. Because guess what? If I didn't have the Lord, I wholeheartedly 100% believe that I wouldn't be making this video right now because I'd be in the ground. I'd be dead. And aside from that, the trauma that my family had to go through because too many people are so scared of what the government will do to them if they speak out of line, that my mom 2 years before this, had to watch her mother die in a very similar circumstance to what I was going through. 8 months in the hospital with gastrointestinal problems like I had. My family has been through so much crap because of that stupid shot, and nobody besides a select few people, like my church, some family, some friends, and nurses and doctors that actually care to listen instead of looking at me like I'm a heretic. Those people care. But guess what? You know what the world calls me? The people that think that the vaccine was some sort of miracle drug. They think I'm crazy. They think that I am somehow this radical conspiracy theorist. And get this, just yesterday, I got results from a blood test back because we had asked to see if the spike protein from the vaccine was still in my blood. Sure enough, it's positive a year and a half later when it's only supposed to be in there for 4 weeks maximum. And hey, at the end of the day, I can't convince people to believe me. But for those who do, after I post this video, for those who do believe me, thank you. And at the end of the day, I know that the Lord kept me alive because he has a purpose for my life. I've been through the ringer. I got a really crappy 18th birthday present. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things I've learned from it. And if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for all the crap I've had to go through, my faith wouldn't be what it is now. The strength that I have in the Lord wouldn't be what it is now. So I hope that if someone that sees this video has gone through something similar, or is a vaccine injury, or knows people who are vaccine injuries who are too afraid to talk, please comment down below, let me know, and I will get that message out. Because it is abhorrently wrong what these people have done with this vaccine, and how our government just stands behind it idly by, lets it happen, and not only lets it happen, but makes it happen. I don't trust any worldly government. I trust his government. I trust the kingdom of the Lord. And guess what? At the end of the day, no matter what happens to me, for the people who did to me what they did, I forgive them. I forgive them because I'm commanded to forgive them. Because I know that if I wasn't a man of faith and I didn't have God and I didn't understand what the Lord did for me on the cross and how he bled for my transgressions and my sins and for the sins of the world, how he who knew no sin became sin for us so that we may be saved. If I didn't know that, if I didn't understand that, I would have had a very, very different approach. But still, my message to you now is don't trust everything that the government tells you. Don't take it for face value. Look, read, understand what they are doing to you, to our nation, and to our values. There's a guy that I met in Virginia. He's like 22 now, probably 23. He got vaccinated, never had a heart problem a day in his life. He went into the ER because of chest pain. They did an ultrasound of his heart. They said that you have a heart murmur so big that if you run, you die. That's what he told me, and I believe him. There's a guy that he told me about also that can't even walk anymore because neuropathy shot up his legs, and he's a couple years older than I am. There are people that my family knows personally that have been hurt by this, not only me. So I implore you now that if you know someone like this, if you see what's really going on with this stuff, speak out. Allow people that run this nation to hear what you're saying, because guess what? That's the reason they get away with so much crap, because not enough of us are willing to stand up and call them out on it. Not enough of us are. But I am. And many of my brethren, both in uniform and not, are in and ready to stand up and make our voices heard. I didn't spend 130 days in a bed for nothing. And guess what? The freedom that my ancestors and many of our ancestors fought for and died for, they didn't die in vain. But I leave you with this. The only way we can get out of this safely is if we turn back to the Lord. It's the only way, only possible way. We will never get on the right path if we are doing it in a self-centered way. You live a life of restraint. You live a life of worship to the Lord. No matter what happens to you, you know where you're going. You know how the story ends. So I ask of you, for the people who will see this video who aren't believers, do you worry about the things going on? Because even though I have my faith, I worry sometimes too. Because at the end of the day, I love my country. And I know that all empires of the world fall. But I hope one day that if the Lord blesses me with the time to have children, I want my children to see the America, not the one that I grew up in, but the America my father grew up in. We're too far off to see the America my grandparents grew up in. But I hope and I pray that this nation finds itself again, but doesn't find itself in worldly pleasure and worldly philosophy, but in godly philosophy and in Jesus philosophy. So I thank all of you. I hope God finds you well tonight. And I hope that as you go into the rest of this week, maybe think to yourself, does the government have my best interests in mind, or are they working out for themselves? Because if you pay attention to human history, it's generally the latter. Because guess what? If a government cared about its people or its military as much as they should, we would be in a very different position right now. But they don't. They line their pockets with insider trading and corruption. And it's detailed. You know, you don't have to go as far as the east as from the west, or down a rabbit hole and up a tree to find detailed corruption. America is the last place of freedom on earth, but the only place of eternal freedom is with Him. And it's through the Word of God. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. I hope you have a great night. God bless.